Welcome back to the Florida Food Forest. I'm Shannie McCabe, and this is your ultimate guide to growing fennel bulb. Fennel bulb is one of my very favorite vegetables to eat, so I had to master growing this veggie. I am not the only one in my house that is obsessed with fennel bulb. Yes, I like to have these thin shaved in salads. I love the licorice-like flavor and the crispy, juicy texture. But my toddler also requests this almost daily, and my baby, who's about 8 months old, she started her solid eating journey with fennel stalks, and she still loves to chew on them. They seem to be a really nice little teether, the stalks. So both my kids love it, my husband loves it, I love it. It's a family favorite, so naturally I have to really learn how to lock it in and grow this one well. I've been growing fennel bulb in Central Florida for the last few years here, really perfecting how to grow big, juicy bulbs, those real grocery store quality, massive yields I'm looking for. Now, I am going to give you helpful tips and an ultimate growing guide, but this is not just for Florida growers. This is a guide for how to grow fennel bulb no matter where you live. So first things first, what is fennel bulb? Maybe you have not run across this in your grocery store yet and you're unfamiliar with this plant. Fennel is a member of the carrot or Apiaceae family, and it is related to perennial fennel. Now, you may be familiar with perennial fennel. That is a very tall type of fennel. It makes large umbels or flower clusters. If you live in California, perennial fennel is a very common plant on the side of the highway, and it can be a little bit invasive. This is not a perennial type. This is going to resist bolting as best as it can. We're going to try to help it resist bolting by planting it at the right time of year. But this is not a type that is prized for its flowers, and it does not have an invasive quality to it. This plant is one that is selected and perfected for its enlarged stems, which are overlapping one another to create what is colloquially known as a bulb, but is really just a cluster of overlapping enlarged stems. So this variety is selected for its enlarged stems. It is not prone to bolting or flowering, and it tops out at just about 2 feet tall, very different from perennial type fennel, which is tall, makes large flowers, and gets a little bit aggressive in its growing habit. Let's talk seed starting. Now, you can tell these are members of the carrot family. These seeds are light as a feather. Don't sneeze when you have these seeds in your hand. They're gonna go flying. Fennel seeds should be sown 1/4 inch deep, and they should be spaced at a final spacing of a minimum of 6 inches apart. But I have found for really large bulbs, I go for more 8 to 10 inches apart, really giving them some adequate spacing. And fennel can be direct sown or it can be started in trays. I've done both and I've had about equal success. I can't really say one was better than the other. That's up to your personal preference. We are going to be careful not to disturb the taproot if you do start them in trays and transplant. Transplant them very carefully because they do have a large taproot that can be a bit sensitive. We are going to sow them and spread them just 6 inches apart. We are going to make sure that we provide ideal conditions. If we want really large fennel bulbs, like the ones I've grown here, we're going to make sure that we provide well-dug, rich soil. It also wants to be well-drained. A little bit of sand in your soil is not a bad thing. That's great news for me here in Central Florida, but I did need to amend my soil pretty significantly in order to give them the fertility and nutrition that they really need. They want higher organic matter. Fennel is also going to require consistent watering, especially when they are starting to germinate. Just like a carrot seed, these seeds are fairly easy to dry out and to fail in germination. So we're going to make sure that we keep these seeds babied along until they sprout. Timing your planting window is important with fennel bulb. Now, here in Central Florida, we're super fortunate. We get to plant them in spring, winter, or fall. Definitely cannot grow them along summer, and we have to avoid late spring and early fall when the temperatures are really hot. So we can grow them 3 times throughout the season pretty easily. I've grown them all 3 of those seasons with great success. Now, if you are someone who is growing in a northern latitude, I'm originally from Rhode Island. Say I was growing these fennel bulbs in Rhode Island. I'm actually going to wait to start my seeds until after the summer solstice because I don't want the long days of summer to trick my fennel bulbs into bolting prematurely. Fennel bulb is a little bit day length sensitive and it doesn't like scorching heat. Now, up north, we're really not going to get the kind of hot days that are going to stress out a fennel bulb, but the long, long days of summer up north are going to trigger those plants to prematurely bolt. So, unlike down here in Florida where I have quite a few planting windows to get into, I am going to whittle it down to just after the summer solstice. I'm going to start those midsummer seedlings, baby them along, make sure they don't dry out in my hot summer days up north, and then I am going to transplant them out and make sure that they are ready for harvest in the fall as the days start to shorten. So be mindful, these plants don't like super long days. They're going to start to bolt and they're not going to give as much energy to their bulbing, and they don't like excruciating hot temperature. Try to aim for shorter days and milder temperatures. I want to give you a look at the massive taproot on this plant. It's going to give us some clues as to what kind of care the plant requires. Take a look at that taproot. Let's get a look at just how long the taproot is on this plant and get a look at how gorgeous this massive fat fennel bulb is. This exceptional fennel bulb was grown in the tender care of my raised bed garden, which has automated watering that comes on very regularly, and it has high organic matter because I bought in the best quality raised bed mix I could find. With these kinds of conditions, I made extra large fennel bulbs and they were absolutely delicious. This is what I consider ideal conditions. If you are dead set on growing the largest fennel bulbs possible, you have to provide high organic matter, good quality soil, the best you can find, but also well drained, and you've got to provide regular watering. Don't make these plants stress out or dry out. That's going to come at the expense of the size of the bulb. Now we're going to take a look at a different part of my farm where I grew some fennel bulbs that didn't quite get this big, and we're going to find out why. Here's my in-ground planted fennel patch for comparison. This is probably one of the biggest bulbs that I grew in ground. This is the exact same variety as this. They were started at the same time. The difference is conditions. Now, this plant was grown in the raised beds. It received high quality, high organic matter soil and drip irrigation that was running very regularly. But this one really shows us the importance of high organic matter and good quality soil. I very scantily amended the soil in the in-ground planted fennel patch here. So next season, if I'm going to try this again in ground, I'm going to have to at least double the amount of organic matter added to the soil. This may help if I do a cover crop in the meantime and turn it in, a little green manure. Right now, as the native soil stands, it is not rich enough to grow a good crop of fennel bulbs. So it's going to have to either be in a raised bed, a grow bag, or I'm gonna have to do some serious work to my in-ground planting site. Here we are. This is a plant that was grown in my native soil. It's the same variety and was started at the same time as this one in my raised bed, but this one did not have regular watering and it had poor soil. So you can see the proof's in the pudding right here. Feed it well, water it well, you're gonna get a monster. Starve it out, this is what you're gonna get. So it really is one of those plants that just likes a bit extra to really get to that monstrous size. It's not much more. Another helpful tip in growing a good batch of fennel bulb is to weed adequately around the plants. They don't like to compete for nutrients and water with weeds around them. Now, for additional fertility, I did use rabbit manure, aka bunny berries, and this did help. I noticed that the ones that got the rabbit manure were a little bit larger. I also added a liquid organic fertilizer fairly regularly. There are a number of different organic fertilizers you can choose from, but high fertility is just going to make for bigger, better plants. How do we know when to harvest? That is purely up to you, my friends. It's really just when you want to eat your fennel and when you think it's a good size. This is absolutely massive and impressive, but it is several weeks later than I intended to harvest it. This is still going to be delicious, but just a little bit more big and tough than I need it to be. This is a wonderful size for harvesting as well. Now here's a helpful growing tip specifically for Florida or southeastern gardeners who grow in sandy soil. Let's inspect the roots to get some information. Now, this was grown in fresh, just bought in raised bed mix. There was absolutely no root knot nematode damage on this root. So this plant grew beautifully, grew huge, unimpeded. Now this was in native soil. Nematodes are present. The root knot nematode is very much present in the soil here on my farm and everywhere in Florida. And indeed, I can see gnarled roots and bumps, which definitely indicate root knot nematode affected this plant. Now that is going to stunt growth, steal nutrients, and generally make for a slower and less happy growing plant. And you can see that is just not a healthy taproot, especially compared to this. So what do you do about root knot nematodes in Florida, in your native soil? There's not much you can do. If I'm going to continue to grow in ground here, which I absolutely intend to do, the most I can do is to increase the organic matter of my soil, and it can be very helpful to add some crab meal to my soil each year. So I will be adding a generous helping of crab meal to all of my garden beds to ensure that I can help improve the levels of chitin in the soil from the crab meal, and that's going to help fight off root knot nematode damage. Also, I may attempt a cover crop of the French marigold that is specifically known to combat root knot nematode. The deal is you have to do an entire carpet of the same kind of marigold, that French marigold that's specific for root knot nematode, and then mostly the nematocydic properties will remain in the soil just for that next following season's crop. So I could plant a big cover crop of French marigold, pull them out, and the subsequent crop is going to have nematode-free soil, probably just for 1 to 2 seasons. It's not a forever fix, but it can help to eradicate the RKN at least for a season or so. I can also order beneficial nematodes online and try to outcompete the root knot nematode with beneficial nematodes. These are just a few of the ways to ensure that you've got root knot nematode-free plants instead of ones that are getting stunted and affected like this. So there you have it, your ultimate guide to growing fat fennel bulbs. It's not rocket science. Put in a little effort so you can get these instead of these, and happy growing.